So let's continue working on our FRC 2023 scouting app. We're going to be focusing on calculations, and we're going to continue to do our statistics, but we're going to start to focus less on a match level, and we're going to start focusing on statistics at a robot level. So we're going to be focusing on this group by up here. And before I get too much into what we're actually going to do with our calculations, let's talk about what is a group by. So a group by is any time that you say per. So if you say I'm going to get the average score per competition, or the revenue per month, the minimum score per year, that per indicates that you're doing some kind of group by. And in this case, and all the cases on the screen, the group by is the word that comes immediately after per. So average score per competition shows that you're going to group by competition. Average items per team suggests that you're doing a group by per team. So with that in mind, let's look at what our calculations are like with and without group bys. So what we've done so far, right? Imagine we have this table. This is all the data that someone's put in to our RLD application through one of our forms. We've got team number, we've got a match number, we've got cones, mid, high, and low, and we've also got two teams here, team 1, 2, 3, 4, and team 3, 1, 4. And whenever we add a new calculation, it just adds a new column to all of the records. So in this case, it's auto cones scored, which adds up all the guys here. So in this case, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 0 plus 0 is 2, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3, and so on. So this is how a normal calculation works, and you'll notice from last time we did stuff just like this. So what happens when you start doing group bys? Right, so we just went over no group bys in this situation. We have the exact same table from last slide. So now, when we go ahead and do a group by, we're going to do a group by team number or robot. This is what the table looks like. So now, you no longer have 1, 2, 3, 4 show up multiple times with each match. Each unique team number shows up with only one row. So 1, 2, 3, 4 has now only one row in the table. 3, 1, 4 has only one row in the table. And you'll notice it's no longer just one number for match, but rather it's the list of all the matches that they played. And the same is true with the auto cones high, auto cones mid, auto cones low, and even the calculated field that we did from earlier. So now what happens when you add a calculation onto that? Well, let's take that same table, right? So team number, match, auto cones high, mid, low, and auto cones score. And let's go ahead and let's add a calculation onto it. And that calculation is going to be the average number of cones scored in autonomous. So if we do that math by ourselves, it's pretty easy, right? So if we add up auto cones scored, we do 2 plus 2 plus 3, that's going to be 7. And then 7 divided by 3 gets us 2.33. That's the average number of auto cones scored per match. This one's even easier. 3 plus 3 plus 3 divided by 3 is 3. So we went ahead, we grouped by team number. We got this list of all the numbers for each field and each calculation. And then we can start doing things like this. Calculations like average of auto cones scored, which just adds a new column to this table where only team numbers show up a single time. So we'll only see 1, 2, 3, 4 one time, and it will only have one number for its grouped by calculations, whereas all its other calculations will be lists of numbers. Now, you can get complicated with your group by calculations if you want as well. So let's say we've got two grouped by calculations. We got the average number of auto cones, as we just discussed before, and now we've also gotten the average number of auto cubes. Well, something we might want to know is how many items have they scored in general. And we might set up this calculation where we do average auto cones plus average auto cubes to get our average items scored. Well, we can do it exactly like this, and we will here in a moment, to get another column on this table that is the average number of items scored that looks exactly like a group by calculation, but it actually used other group by calculations to calculate itself. Okay? So as a quick wrap up, and what we're going to do here in a second is we've already done our match stats tab, right? So we had no group by and an auto cone scored. We added those three together. Auto cube scored. We added these three together. Then when we get to our other tab, our robot stats tab, we're going to group by team number, and then we're going to set up these three calculations right here. So to get started with the calculations we just talked about, for those of you who are following along closely, you might have noticed that we never actually made a number of auto cones and cubes scored. So let's go back to our tab 1 and let's go make that quick, just like we saw in the slide presentation. So we'll make auto cubes scored, and we're also going to make auto cones scored. All right, and this should be really easy. We're just going to scroll down until we see these fields that you'll notice we also used inside of the auto high, mid, and low scores. And we're just going to add them together. All right, so now we have the match level auto cubes and auto cones scored that we saw added to the original table. Now let's go ahead and do our group by team number on this robot tab. And if you're wondering how to add a tab, it's really easy. Just click plus, put in the name of the tab, and click create. Once you've done that, let's go ahead and scroll all the way down, find team number, and put it into our group by. So now we have the table where each team number, each unique team number, has only one row in the table, and that's what our calculations are going to be done on. So let's go ahead and start by doing the average number of cones and cubes scored in auto. So we'll make two calculations: average auto cones and average auto cubes. All right, and just like in the presentation, it should be really easy. We're just going to grab average and then put auto cones scored inside of it, and likewise cubes for average auto cubes. So we'll go to statistics on the right. We're going to go grab average and throw it in there. And then let's go all the way down here, grab our auto cubes scored, put that into cubes, and grab our auto cones scored and put that into the cones. Now finally, the last one that we did on our slideshow presentation was the average items scored. And this one should be very trivial. We're just going to grab average auto cones and add it to average auto cubes. Great, we should be done. We've gotten as far as we talked about in the slides earlier. Let's go ahead and make a new table and let's look at these three stats. So let's create a new table. I'm going to call this our robot stats. And we're going to use this to look at all of our grouped by team number calculations. And let's start by grabbing the team number and putting it on here. And then let's go to calculated fields and let's grab the fields that we just made. That's going to be average cones auto, average cubes auto. So we'll grab that and that. Bam. And here we go. So we can see each team only has one number in there, and we've got an average number of cubes in auto and cones in auto coming out. Awesome. We can also find the average items scored as well. We'll put that on there, and you'll notice, look at that. It's adding up all the numbers from each one. So that's a good basis to start with, but let's go back to our calculations and let's do a couple more basic calculations. So go back to the robot tab, and if we go and open our calculated fields, we'll notice a whole lot of scoring. Let's just do a couple more basic robot stats. Let's do the average auto score, average teleop score, and average total score. All right, so let's go ahead and just like we did the other guys, we're just going to grab average, throw it into each one, and then we're going to grab the corresponding field that we did on tab 1. So in this case, total score, teleop score. We go all the way up here, we should find auto score. Really cool. One more thing that we should probably get to is doing percents on group by. So let's go ahead and make a new calculation and let's call it percent engaged. So the percent of the time that somebody engages at the end of the match. If we go back to our tab 1, we'll actually find where we did some of this. We went ahead and we did endgame docking score. So endgame scoring equals parked equals engaged. We multiply by all of that. Let's go ahead and make a new calculation called end game engaged, where we're just going to get a true or false for whether or not we were engaged in the end game. So we'll go to our end game scoring that we see up here, and we're going to drag it into here, and we're just going to do an equals equals on here to see if the end game scoring equals engaged. So we should only get one thing back for that, and if it's engaged, then this is going to be true or 1, and if it wasn't engaged, this will be 0 or false. Now, if we go back to robot, we can go ahead and do our percent. Returns the percent of time between 0 and 1 that argument 1 appears in the argument 2 array. So, to put that into plain English, we're going to grab true or false and see how many times it appears in the calculation that we just made. So I'm going to grab number here. I'm going to put 1 for true. So the number of times that 1 shows up in our endgame engaged stat that we just made. And remember, just like on that slideshow, when we do group by team number, we end up with a list of matches for the endgame engaged. So we're going to see how many numbers in that list are 1, meaning true rather than 0, which would be false. So let's go back to our table and let's take a quick look at this. So we've got our average cones, cubes, and items. Let's go ahead and add in a couple other of our calculated fields. So let's go to percent engaged. And look at that. So we've got percent engaged. It's 1s and 0s. That's because each one of these teams only had 1 match so far. Okay, let's add in our teleop score, or our average, teleop score. Average total score, average teleop score, and average auto score. Bam. And there we go. We're starting to get some really cool numbers. We're starting to get a lot of interesting stuff here so we can watch a robot in the competition and get all of the general stats about it. Start to boil them down to something that's a little bit more manageable and understandable. So in our next video, we're going to get into some slightly more complicated stats. We're also going to talk about grouping by multiple things rather than just by team number.